Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm Tanya from the product marketing team here at WebEngage, and today we're going to continue our discussion on Journey Designer. Last time we covered the basics of Journey Designer, how to set up your campaign, what are the basics of Journey Designer, and what are the basic use cases that you can implement. But today I'm going to go one step further and talk about the advanced use cases that you can implement using Journey Designer. But before I do that, here's a quick reminder for all of you attending this webinar to put in all your queries and your comments in the comment box below, and I'll be answering them as soon as we're done with the presentation. So let's kickstart with the presentation. I'll just quickly begin with a recap of what we covered in the last webinar. We covered that there are four basic blocks to your journey designer. One is triggers. Now triggers are blocks which will help you which will help as entry points for your journey campaigns. These can be anything from calling an API, user enters or exits a segment, user performs an event, using a specific CSV file. So these blocks forms as triggers to your journeys, which will help users flow into your journey campaigns. Second is actions. Now, actions are how you engage with your users within your entire journey. Actions are all those blocks wherein you can use to send email, send push, send web push, send web inline, send app inline. So any action that you want to send to the user in terms of and in terms of a communication or a campaign is done through actions. Third is flow controls. Now, flow controls determine the length or the duration over which any user will experience your journey within the journey designer. Now, this includes wait blocks, split block, like we covered last time, to split users into two separate branches so that you can experiment with either a different send time, a different channel, or a message strategy. Now, the fourth and the final is conditions. Now, conditions are with yes and no logic blocks, which will help you understand the user's preference and behavior. Now, these blocks can help you check a user attribute, and also help you check the best channel for a user, check whether a user is reachable on a particular channel or not, and then proceed from this block forward. Now, quickly doing another recap of the advantages of using Journey Designer. So, the first one is that it is intent based. So, all your triggers are based on what a user has done. A user has performed an action on your website in terms of adding a product to your cart, filling up your contact form, signing up for an edtech course, or if a user has signed up to your newsletter, or if a user has become an active user or a dormant user, and so on. Journey Designer has a very simple to use drag and drop interface, which helps you in creating journey campaigns in less than 15 minutes. It helps you with real time analytics so that at any given point in time you have access to important metrics such as users who enter the journey, users who exit the journey, and the number of conversions you're getting within your journey campaigns, and so on. Fourth is that it helps you contextualize your message strategy based on the audience or based on the trigger that you've selected. You can implement a contextual message strategy based on the audience type. So, for example, if I've set a journey for abandoned cart users, I know that my target segment is users who've put a product in their cart and have not purchased or have not gone ahead with a further purchase. So I can then contextualize my message strategy accordingly. And not just that, I can also use personalization within my message strategy to make sure that my communication speaks at a one-on-one level with any user receiving my campaigns. Fifth is that it helps you make an omni-channel experience for your users. It helps you combine all your engagement channels available on your WebEngage dashboard into one single journey campaign. You can leverage email, SMS, push, web push, and many more channels within one single journey designer. And last is that it helps you reduce your manual effort by helping you set up journeys very quickly, by helping you identify basic journeys and also advanced journeys that you need to set up on the basis of trigger. It helps you remove the manual process in updating as well as creating multiple manual campaigns. Moving on, today, like I said, we're going to be discussing some advanced use cases. So these are the 5 use cases that I want to touch base. However, these are not specific to any industry, but I will try and cover or relate it to as many industries as possible for you. But the 5 use cases that we're gonna go ahead with are: one is to look at reactivation, which will happen through once a user enters or exits a segment trigger. Second is subscription. We'll follow what different stages in a user's subscription lifecycle can be used to trigger a communication or a journey campaign. Third is lead scoring. We'll understand why would you want to lead score your users and how to go about it, and what is the incentive behind this lead scoring, or what is the end goal that you're trying to achieve with lead scoring. Fourth is any milestone that the user has achieved. Now, this can be great to incentivize users to, let's say, do 5 purchases in a month, or sign up or register to 2 courses in 1 quarter. So it's good to sort of have a milestone and drive users to that milestone. And the fifth and the last use case that we're going to be discussing is to fetch additional user data by calling an API. So call an API is again a block within your journey campaigns that you can use to make sure that your messages are more personalized. I'll also be going through various examples of how you can use the call API block in your journey campaigns. So let's get started with the first use case, which is reactivation. The trigger for my reactivation campaign would be whenever a user enter or exits a segment. Now, what you see on the right is exactly something that I'm just going to head over to the dashboard and we're going to replicate the same campaign. So once I switch over to the dashboard, I have already prepared a reactivation journey campaign, which I'm going to be walking through. To begin with, I have selected my entry trigger as enter exit segment. Once you click on this, you can allow what your trigger needs to look like. Either you're looking at users who enter a particular segment, user who enter or is already in a segment, users who are already in a particular live segment, and exits. Now, once you select either of these, you can select the segments that you have here. So for my example here, I have selected users who enter your newsletter subscription segment. So users who have newly subscribed to your newsletter, you'd want to go ahead and show them a welcome message that, hi, we know that you've subscribed to our newsletter. These are the offerings. Why don't you go ahead and explore? As second step, I have used a condition block, which is check if the user is reachable. And I have put a check on email. So once you click here, you get the option to select all the channels that there are available. And if the user is reachable on email, I have put another flow control block, which is the split block here. What I'm doing here is I'm splitting my users intelligently on the basis of clicks. Again, you can decide to not do an intelligent optimization and add branches or distribute or allocate the distribution percentage, or you can just simply click on intelligent optimization and select your optimization criteria from either clicks or conversions as per your preference. Now, after splitting my users into 2 branches, what I've done is I am trying to experiment with what happens when I wait for an hour versus what happens when I wait for a day. And I'm going to be sending the same email to help me understand the impact of the 1 hour time gap versus the 1 day time gap. So, this is a very small example of how my reactivation journey looks like for a newsletter subscription. Having said that, there are other use cases that you can utilize for your reactivation journey. which are, for example, when a user, the example that I showed you right now was when a user subscribes to a newsletter. The opposite is also true when when a user exits the segment newsletter subscribed, or enters the segment newsletter unsubscribed. You would essentially want to understand what went wrong, and if they would consider resubscribing to your newsletter. Once they do that, you can also have this reactivation journey flowing for users who have done a sign up for the second time on your platform. Now, it this reactivation is also useful for users who have turned inactive or have turned dormant on your platform. For example, if you are an e-commerce platform and if a user has stopped visiting your app or your website and was last seen, let's say, in the last 3 months, then you would want to classify that user as an inactive browser, and you would then try and do this reactivation campaign if that inactive user comes back to your platform and starts browsing for products on your platform. Reactivation journey is also helpful for a subscription based model wherein wherein a user's subscription has already expired, and it's been expired for, let's say, a month or more, and the user then considers to resubscribe. So upon that resubscription, you can start this reactivation journey, which will be different from a subscription journey, because for reactivation, you know that the user had already purchased the subscription before, so there is no need to make sure that the user knows of your product offerings because the user is already aware. What's more important here is to take the user to the next step, to either bring that user to complete a milestone, another example that we're going to be covering, or make sure that you gamify the experience of the user and have the user uh, purchasing more products or doing more conversions on your platform. Now, reactivation is also helpful in the cases of edtech wherein a user has restarted a course. For example, user purchased a course and has left the course unattended and has not started or has not yet even finished through first set of the course, and the user now comes back to restarts the course. You can definitely start a reactivation journey for those users to help them understand that this is what they've been missing while they were away, and these are the new additions in their courses, and sort of nudging them to complete their courses faster. Last is when a user was last seen. So on the basis of user activity on your platform, you can start your reactivation journey once the user becomes active on your platform again. So it's a good way to sort of have your warm leads know that uh, you know what they've done on your platform, and you're aware that they're coming back or giving your nudging browsing products on your platform. It's a good way for you to nudge those users, because those users are already warm to your brand. They already know about your offerings, and it's always a friendlier experience when you sort of have this welcome sort of a series for your users on the platform. These are some examples of what reactivation messages would look like. On the far left, you have once a user resubscribes after unsubscribing. The one in the middle is once an inactive user turns back active. This can be done on the basis of last seen on the platform, or even if it's a website or an app. Then is once a user resubscribes, or once a user repurchases the subscription, you'd want to welcome back that user and send a message which says that this is what's new, or this is what's been happening while you were away. The second use case that we're going to discuss right now is the one for subscription. So we're going to understand what are the different touch points in any subscription life cycle of a user that you can target to sort of send your journey campaigns out. Again, the trigger for this subscription based campaigns would also be when a user enters or exits a segment. Now, these subscription reminders for your BFSI or fintech brand can also translate into sending SIP renewal reminders or investment related reminders and so on. In my example that you can see here, I have used my enter exit segment as a trigger here. And what I have done is when the user enters my segment, which is subscription equals renewal. Now, this segment, how I've created, is based on the attribution that the subscription status is equals to renewal. One more thing that you can do here as an entry point is use the change in user attribute trigger. Now, you can trigger this when there is a specific change in the user attribute value. If you select for any, so for example, if you have a subscription model which aligns user on the basis of new, active, dormant, and inactive. So these are the four categories. So if there's any change in the value of the subscription status, you should go ahead and use the any option. However, if you're looking for a specific change, for example, from active to dormant, then you would go want to go ahead and use your specific option here. So once you select this, I'm going to select subscription status. And now I'm going to select the new value or the old value. So I'm going to say that the new value of my attribute changes to renewal, let's say. Right? So only in cases where the value of my attribute, which is subscription status, changes to renewal, this will be the cause of the trigger in this journey campaign. So you can either go ahead and use the segment form, wherein you can create a live segment of users who are entering on the same basis to your renewal segment, or you can use a change in user attribute. Once you do that, what I've done next is I have put a time block over here, which is wait for the time slots from under flow control, to make sure that whenever a user enters your segment, either renewal or active, even if it happens at night, we are making sure that the user is not getting communication at odd hours. So I have selected in the user's time zone option here, and communication can go out any day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, you can change this as per your preferences. Now, I have put an option to select a condition block to select the best channel for the user. Once done, I have put in email, SMS, push, and web inline content in the otherwise node. So, for example, we're not able to find the best channel for the user. For example, if it's not either email, SMS, or push, then you'd want the rest of the users to flow into this block. Now, these action blocks can be basic subscription reminders that, hey, um, your subscription, you're in the renewal segment, your subscription is about to get renewed, purchase your subscription or renew your subscription now. Or you could also have a second line of communication, a second nudge of communication going to these users, which could then be offer based incentive to come back and renew the subscription. What I've done here is I've put a wait for event to check if the customer comes back and purchases or renews the segment. If yes, what I have done here is I have set the value of user attribute, which you can find from under action block. Now, what the set user attribute block does is it will set an attribute that you've already defined, or it will create a new user attribute as per your requirement. So, for example, if you want to say that the user has made a purchase, I'm going ahead and setting the user attribute here. So now you have two types. You can set the value of the existing user attribute, or you can create a new user attribute. So, for example, if you want to select the existing attribute, you can select the attribute of subscription status and change the value to active. So what I checked back was if the user had made a successful purchase after you've sent the renewal communication to the user. If yes, then set the user attribute to active. Once you're done, you can just simply click on save, and the user attribution um, status will change from right here. And once the user does that, it's always good to send a re-welcome email to users that, hi, your subscription has been confirmed, which is why I've put in this email block here. In case the subscription has not been purchased, you can then wait for one day, um, and and I've also put in some details here. You can look for the user attribute time and date, and then proceed to this block, from this block, to say that okay, now you're waiting for the date and time of the value of a user attribute. So you can put in your attribute here, such as subscription end date. So once you put subscription end date, what this block is doing here is, for any user, if your subscription end date is um, 6th of July, then it's going to wait for your end date and then proceed from this block either before, immediately, or after the number of days, minutes, hours, weeks, or months that you've selected. So, for example, if your end date is 6th of July, your subscription is ending on the 6th of July, then one day before, this communication will be triggered to the user. Now, this is a very helpful blog because it'll help you understand, or help you send those last one day remaining communications where you'd want to go ahead and communicate to the user, hi, your subscription is ending tomorrow, do you want to reconsider renewing your subscription? So this can again be picked from the flow control block, wait for date event. Now, this wait for date event can be based on the user attributes date and time, or you can also wait for an event attribute date and time. For example, a departure time or a flight booked event. Now, once you have information of these event attributes flowing into your web engage dashboard, you will have the option to select it and identify which event are you talking about. So, for example, by default, the only event that shows here right now is the purchase made. Now, this will sort of help you understand if the purchase was made from the previous flow control block that we had here, which was purchase made. So it will check for this event and accordingly wait for the days and then send a communication. Now, this is for the subscription campaign. Now, let's see what other uses are there that you can use for a subscription based journey that you're creating. Like I mentioned, you can nudge users before their subscription end date to successfully renew their subscription. You can send insurance reminders, you can send SIP renewal reminders, or you can also nudge users after a free trial. So, for example, for the likes of any media and entertainment brands such as Netflix or Hotstar, if your business model allows for a free trial, it'd be a good sort of a trigger for you to have these free trial nudges after the user's 1 month or n number of months of free trial has ended, to nudge them to purchase or consider buying a full-time subscription. These are some examples of what your subscription campaigns looks like. On the far left, you have what happens when the user signs up after unsubscribing. User transaction reminders. So only 5 days left or only 6 days left for your subscription to end. The last one is when a user repurchases your paid subscription. So you want to nudge that user saying that, hi, you can now have ad free music, or you can now view a number of TV shows, or you can now have access to a number of articles on our platform if you're in a media and entertainment industry. The another use case that we're going to discuss here is lead scoring. Now, before I get into lead scoring, we're going to make use of the same journey block that we discussed right now, which is set user attribute, which will be a very important journey block for us to sort of implement while you're implementing any lead scoring campaigns. So the image that you see on the right is something that I'll help you understand, and how do you sort of set your lead scoring campaigns on your dashboard. So for a lead scoring campaign, I have picked three triggers for a user to follow. The first is if a user views a particular category, or if a user views your contact page, or if a user on your contact page clicks on the contact us button clicked. Now these are the three triggers that the user, that signifies that the user is coming on your platform, is interested in what you have to offer, and is doing either of the three events above, for you to then go ahead and say that I know that this user is engaging with me. I'd want to go ahead and set an engagement score, which is something that I've done next using the set user attribute from under actions. Now, what I've done here is I've created a new user attribute, which is engagement score. So once you do that, you can select if it's a number, string, date, or boolean data type. Once you do that, you can set its value. So what I've done here is I have set a new attribute called engagement score, and I've set that value to 5 to begin with. So if a user comes, views your category, or views your contact page, or contact us form clicked, then I will set your engagement score to 5. Now I have again selected a proceed from this block event. And once you do that, I have selected the same user time zone and any day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now, once done, I am going ahead and showing an on-site notification to my user, which will be on the lines of if the user is interested in my product or my product offerings. If yes, if the user clicks on that notification, I'm going to increase that engagement score by 5 more points, which will then be 10 points for the user. Now, if the engagement score is 10, I've also put in two other entry triggers. I would want to give an engagement score of 10 if a user goes ahead and simply subscribes to my newsletter, or goes ahead and submits my contact form. So, for the first level of actions, which is where a user is showing interest but is not definitely doing an action that you'd want the user to take, i.e., making a purchase, subscribing to your newsletter, and so on. So these are actions that the user is taking that is proving some form of intent, which is why I've set the engagement score to 5. However, if the user subscribes to your newsletter, contacts you, or fills up your contact form, then you'd want to set the engagement score to 10. Now, again, this can differ as per your preferences, and this is just an example of how ideally a lead scoring journey would follow. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and select the best channel for each user and then send a nudge accordingly. So, for example, let's say now that the user has subscribed to your newsletter, has submitted a contact form, has viewed category on your page, has viewed your contact page, has clicked on contact us, any of these triggers has been done, then you'd want to nudge the user to the next step. So you define what that next step looks like. For me, the next step here is making sure that the user finally makes a purchase on the platform. And once I am sending these communications out, I'm waiting for a wait for event from under flow control. You can select this option here to wait for the event made. Once that's done and once the event is complete, I'm again setting the user attribute and increasing that 10 by another 5 to make sure that my engagement score for any user now reaches 15. If the user has not made a purchase, you can again go ahead and follow the same process of sending a second nudge or a third nudge to your user. However, I've just made arrangements till up until the second nudge here in terms of in-app and a push campaign. However, you can use as many channels that you want, or as many nudges as you want in your journey campaigns. Now, another use case of setting these user attribute is that you want to set up, or you want to have rewards basis on an engagement score of a user. You can do that as well. Now, how would you do that is you would just simply click on the plus button here and then look for the engagement score. Now, you can use that using the change in user attribute, and you can pick the user attribute as engagement score over here, and also filter out what engagement score you're looking for. So for example, for users who've done or users who are at an engagement score equals 10 and you want to drive users towards an engagement score equals 15, you know what your nudges are going to look like. Or for example, a user converted from an engagement score of 5 successfully to an engagement score of 10, you'd want to appreciate that behavior, and you'd also want to communicate to the user that how you moved up a scale. Or if it's a loyalty program, this is another great example of lead scoring that you can follow. Now, some examples of what your lead scoring journey messages could look like. Towards the far left, you have users, you can help users download resources. A part of what your journey messages could be like is to make sure that the users are engaging with the content on your platform, either in the format of reading your articles, downloading your ebooks, or your research papers, and so on. The middle one is to get users to submit more details. So, for example, this is a very common use case that the likes of a Starbucks could follow, which is once you've sort of signed up, they'd want to know your birthday, because it's a very common practice for Starbucks to have these birthday campaigns rolling out for you. So, in case you're a fintech brand or you're a BFSI brand and you want more information out of your users to make sure that you can customize and personalize the experiences as granularly with as much granular information as possible, you can use this as a nudge to make sure that the users are submitting their details. Now you can also use this as a nudge to make sure that the users are filling your contact form, and on the basis of at which stage they are from the starting towards the end goal, you can assign scores to these users. However, you can also do this lead scoring method for active to inactive users. So for example, a user moves from an active to a super active state, you'd want to of course incentivize that behavior. However, if a user goes back from an active to an inactive state, you'd want to then decrease the lead score by 5 points or 10 points as per your preference. Another use case that we're going to discuss now is the milestone achieved. So, milestone achieved is somewhere almost on the lines of a loyalty program. If you want to drive users to a certain step, if you want to make sure that after user has done A, you want to nudge user towards an action B, this is a great example for you to implement using a journey designer. The trigger over here that we'll follow is the enter exit segment trigger. And I'll just go over to the dashboard to help you understand how this use case was achieved. So in my milestone campaign, the journey that I've picked here, the enter exit segment trigger that I've picked here is when a user makes 5 or more purchases, where the purchase made count is greater than 4. So at any given point in time, you can also put in the timeline to this in n number of months or in 1 year or whatever the timeline looks like for you. So when a user has made more than 4 purchases or 5 or more purchases on your platform, I know that my user has become a star user for me. So that's my sort of segmentation of the user on the platform, which is why I've picked the set user attribute from actions, and I'm setting my member status to star. So now you know that you have set the star attribute. You can go ahead and create another journey which is only focused to star users and helping them understand that they've become a star user. So what's next? The what next part is something that I'm just trying to explain here. So once the user or the member status has changed from a normal user to a star user, you're going to send them an email, of course, welcoming them, making sure that they know that you are a valued or a star member on their platform. Now this is great if you have some loyalty program already in place. You can just plug in the user division that you have there to a format or that you can see over here. Once you send the email, I have put in a wait for 1 day block, and after that, I'm checking for the best channel of the user. And accordingly, I'm sending out my campaigns, making sure that I'm now driving the user from that star status to, let's say, a superstar or a star plus, which is, let's say, more than 8 transactions in a month. So after sending all my email push notification campaigns out, I have put another wait for event block, and I'm waiting to see if the user has made a purchase um, within the last 1 week. If the user has made a purchase, I'm gonna again upgrade the member status from star to star plus, or this could be anything that you've identified your user with. However, if the user has not made a purchase, I'm gonna send another or a second series of nudge by checking the best channel for the user, and I'm going to be sending email, SMS, and for users who don't follow into either, for the otherwise branch, I've selected a send SMS block. Now, you can either choose to stop your journey here in order to not nudge the user, or not nudge the user to the point where it's intrusive or irritating to the user, or you don't want to be as pushy. However, you can also utilize these nudges to send promotional campaigns to your users to make sure that your users have the correct incentive to become, let's say, from a star user to a star plus user. And once the user has become a star plus user, you can therefore again have another journey in which you're making the user a star premium user. So these are the different sort of campaigns that you can follow once you're in the milestone journey use case. The other examples that you can follow within this journey use case is to reward behavior such as investments made. So, for example, a user was successful at making the first investment purchase in the last 1 month, or within the first month of completing the user's KYC. You'd want to definitely incentivize this behavior and then drive users towards the next action, which is making sure that the user makes more investment in the upcoming month, and so on. It's also a very, very effective campaign to gamify the process for learning for any edtech platform. You can use this example to make sure that you're gamifying your course incentivization, your course completions, or at any given point in time, you're making sure that the user knows the level of progress they've done on your platform and what is the next set of goals that your user has to accomplish or achieve. Now, some examples of what the messages would look like. Towards the far left, you can see it shows that you're almost there, right? So you're showing the progress of the user in terms of how far the user is from either completing their profile, either completing a course on EdTech, or becoming a star or a star plus or a star premium user. Now, this is a great action for you to nudge your users and also provide them incentive to drive them to make more purchases with your brand. Second is when you reward your user journey, when the user does some action, for example, joins your community. So once the user joins your community, you'd ideally want to welcome that user on the milestone achieve, and then you'd want that user to start interacting and engaging within that community. The third on the far right, the example that you can see is again drive users to become prime members or prime or premium plus members, to make sure that they know the benefits of becoming a prime or a premium user are highlighted to them through this journey, and they're equally incentivized, and you've gamified the process enough for them to make sure that they know the number of points that they've achieved and what's next for them. Now, the last use case that I'm going to be discussing is fetching user data. Now, the journey block that we're going to be using here is called an API block, and I'll explain how you can use this block to fetch additional data or to post some data from the WebEngage dashboard to your servers such as CRM. Going over here, I have again set up a journey which I'll be going through. So I've put in a very simple journey here, but I'm going to be discussing other use cases, how you can use the call and API block. So my basic journey over here is on the trigger of occurrence of an event. So if an add to cart event occurs, I'm going to wait for 1 day for the user to make a purchase. And if the purchase has not happened, now this is a time for me to incentivize the user to purchase the product which is sitting in the user's cart. So on the timeout node, I've connected from under actions, call an API block. So over here, I have selected an API block that will help me get a unique discount code that I can send to the user. Now, if I just call an API over here, you can see that the code has changed to some digit again. Now, if you test again, your code has again changed. So you can use this code to sort of send unique codes out to your customers, make sure that everybody is getting a unique discount code, and therefore you're also able to sort of nudge your users, provide them unique codes, and incentivize their purchase after they've added a product to cart and have not moved forward in their purchase process. After I call this API, on the success of this API, I have selected a best channel block here. And basis on my best channel, I've put in my call, my action blocks such as send email, send SMS, and send push. Now, you can again test with either of these or also experiment with the other values that are available to you over here. Now, coming back to how you can use the call API block in other examples, a very good example of this for the travel and hospitality industry would be to fetch relevant information. So, for example, if a user comes on your platform and browses for a particular flight, you can send user that information that, hey, the flight that you were searching for, there are only 2 seats left on this flight. Now, this information of 2 seats left is something that you can fetch from an additional data source that you have. For an edtech platform, you can show course specific session speaker details. So, for example, if there is a course on Google Analytics and if there is a professor XYZ who's taking this course on Google Analytics, you can also communicate this information to your users in either their email campaigns or their SMS or their push notification campaigns, making sure that the users know that this is the speaker who's taking the Google Analytics class for you, so that it's easier for users to understand where is it that they'd want to sort of go ahead and ask questions to or whom to direct questions to. Second is another use case is that you can feed information of incoming leads to your IVR platform, and then you can also use the lead scoring bit here to make sure that you've scored your leads enough, and also send this information to your external data point to make sure that your CRM team knows whom to call next or which is the warmest lead that they need to reach out to. Now, you can also use this to have the example that I just followed, which is to get unique discounted promotional uh, codes for any promotional campaigns that you're running. And you can also use this if you have like a wallet, an e-wallet, sort of an offering on your platform. So, for example, let's say Paytm, and if you have like 5 rupees in your Paytm wallet, and if you want to go ahead and send a nudge to the user to make sure that the wallet balance is renewed, or if they're making or if they're refilling their wallet balance, now this information of you only have 5 rupees left in your wallet balance is something that you can fetch using an call an API block. Now, some examples of how you can use this as messages would be on the top left. You have the wallet example that I just went through. So, if so over here it says only 45 coins left in your wallet. So that number 45 has come from a call an API block, wherein you have some additional data source, wherein you have this information present on the number of coins left in your wallet. The middle one is when you send unique codes to your users to make sure that they're purchasing with you, and to make sure that each user is getting a unique discount or promotional code on your platform. And the third, towards the far right, is inform users of their activity. Now, a lot of BFSI or investment related businesses can also follow this practice, where they can show the number of investments the user has made, what has been the profit that the user has been able to achieve, what have been the losses, what have been the top performing funds, and so on. So the example over here shows an example of Taco Bell, wherein it shows the number of balance points that they have, the number of reward points they have yet to sort of achieve for the next milestone. So call an API block can be a really useful feature if you want to sort of fetch additional data or send additional data in cases of, where you're doing a lot of lead scoring, where you're calling cold leads, to make sure that you have put an engagement score for those leads, and your CRM team knows exactly whom to contact and which are the warmest leads to sort of contact first. So, with this, we've come to the end of this webinar. In case there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the comment section and I'll be answering those. Okay, so we have a question which says, how do you create an end-to-end automation journey for a lead? So for example, if you have a lead scoring contact form on your website page, you can, with the help of the web engage dashboard, you can track all the lead information that's inflowing through that contact page into your web engage dashboard. Once you do that, you can set up this journey campaign which I just went over, which is once a contact form is submitted can be your trigger. And once that contact form is submitted, you can then do two things. Basically, one, you can assign a score to that user on the basis of the options or the answers that they've put. Secondly, you can then use the call and API block to pass this information over to your IVR or any other CRM data platform that you have, to make sure that this information then passes on to your CRM team, who will be in charge of making sure that these calls go to your users. Now, I'd be happy to give you a detailed walkthrough or an example setup of this. Please do make sure that you reach out to your customer success manager, or you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to guide you forward. For an API setup, we need to take help from the tech team, or it can be done with WebEngage itself. So the API call setup is very, very simple, Anmol. What you really need to do is, from the action block, just select the call and API block there. The only thing that you would need some help with is generating where that data is getting fetched from. So that URL that we're using to fetch that data is something that would be the only thing that you would be needing help with. However, having said that, if you do reach out to us, we'll be happy to see what your use case is and therefore help you with your use case. Great. So I hope this session was helpful enough, that we went through some use cases, some advanced use cases like lead scoring, milestone achievement, and I hope that you do try these out. And if there are any questions at any given point in time, you can either reach out to your CSMs, or you can also reach out to product@webengage.com for further help. I have just one last question that I'd just like to take. For creating unique coupon code, do we need to configure with our backend coupon generating system? Yes, if you do have a coupon generating system on your backend, that would be really helpful in sort of making sure that you are able to send out these unique coupon codes to your users. Or what if you don't have any system in place, what you can simply do is, if you want to go the manual way, you can have an Excel sheet with set of arbitrary unique codes or unique codes that you're sending out to your users. However, if you don't want to go ahead with that option as well, just reach out to us at WebEngage and we'd be happy to help you set something up. Um, I have another question here, which is lead scoring and engagement score automated in WebEngage, or do we need to define parameters? So Vishal, I just went through this in the block. When you go into set the user attribute block, you have two examples there. One is if you want to set a new attribute for a user, or if you want to set a new attribute from scratch for your user. If you don't already have that attribute, you can go ahead and select that option. Second is you want to update the attribute or user attribute that already exists. So if you're going ahead with the second option, and if your data type is of a number data type, let's say you want to, your attribute is engagement score, and you want to increase that engagement score from 5 to 10, or increase by 5 more points, you can also do that option. The way that you can do it is, once you select the existing user attribute, you have the option to select increase by, decrease by, and a couple of other options that are available on the dashboard. So you can choose either your increase by or decrease by option, and then simply put in the value. So for example, if I want to, every time a user does an action, I want to increase the engagement score by 10, you can simply select the existing user attribute, select the option of increase by, and put in the number 10. That should help you. So great. I hope that it was beneficial for all of you there, and I hope you really do try out these use cases in your journey designer. And in case of any questions or queries, you can definitely reach out to us. Thank you everybody for joining in on this broadcast today.